Hello. Today's Wishbone episode pairing is of uh, an episode based on a book that I hadn't read and I loved the episode, and an episode based on a book that I have read uh, that I didn't like the book. The episode was okay. Um, the I don't have the book with me, the one that I've read, because I was in a hurry to get rid of it after I finished it. That book was Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities. But first, there's Silas Marner and the Wishbone episode Golden Retrieved. And I haven't read any George Eliot. I have a George Eliot behind me here. The Mill on the Floss. Yes, Mill on the Floss. It is the only, I believe it is the only book that I was assigned in college that I still have not read. I dropped the class after after a couple of weeks, and we hadn't gotten to that book yet. But I kept the book, and I intend to read it. George Eliot, by the way, not her real name. Her real name, Mary Ann Evans. And let's see. And I, it obviously I still have it. Haven't been in college for a while. Still curious, more curious now. I was going to read it this year anyway because those are the last remaining books that I have that I haven't read yet during this pandemic. But I really, really liked the Silas Marner. I liked both stories, the Silas Marner little dramatization within the episode and the episode about Joe losing Wishbone. I really liked them both. I think this might be, so far, my favorite Wishbone episode. So the basic premise of the Joe part, the real life part, is that Joe has worked really, really hard, earning money to buy the best bike that there is, I guess, and he really wants to use it. But once he's got it, and he's getting it ready to use, and then his mom says, "You need to take Wishbone for a walk," and he doesn't want to take Wishbone for a walk. He just wants to enjoy his bike, but he's got a dog and he has to be responsible. And this is the parallel in the fiction in Silas Marner is that the character Silas Marner works really, really hard, keeps to himself, has a lot of money, has no friends. He's known. He's a linen weaver, I guess. I thought they said lemon weaver, and I was confused, but linen. So let's see. So Joe decides, well, I'll do both. I'll take the bike and the Wishbone to the park. But he can't let loose on the bike while holding on to Wishbone's leash. So he leaves Wishbone tied to a log, and of course Wishbone's collar, as we know, is very ineffective. So Wishbone, another dog comes along, apparently chasing something, and Wishbone wants to play. So, and this is again, the dog doesn't speak to Wishbone, not even in their little thought speak thing. So, but Wishbone just somehow knows. I guess dogs communicate through sniffing each other, and so Wishbone smelled that this other dog was chasing something, and Wishbone wanted to play too. So pulls out of the collar because the collar is useless, and Joe should know that by now, and takes off after the other dog and falls into a hole that's being dug because there's a pipe going through, and it doesn't really matter. It's just a hole traps Wishbone. And Wishbone is found by a man named Hubert. He's an old botanist, ornery guy, loner, like Silas Marner. Silas Marner in the fictional, played by Wishbone, in the fictional in the story part, is robbed, and when he's robbed, that's all. That's again all that he has is his gold. So he gets the townspeople. He lets them know. They get riled up. They go to find whoever robbed him, but the person is not caught. And one day, Silas Marner comes back. He's got some more gold, some new gold that he has earned, but he still doesn't have his old gold. He's still not too happy about that, and he finds a little girl has come into his house and fallen asleep by the fire. And I remembered this is when, because not having any knowledge of Silas Marner, I couldn't tie this episode to a well-known story in my head. So I had forgotten that I'd seen it, but when I saw the little girl and how she's first when she first is shown, it looks like her hair is platinum, and it's actually just very light blonde, but I saw that and I remembered that image from when I was younger. So I had seen the episode. And it turns out this little girl, her mother has recently died, They don't know who the father is, and Silas Marner decides to raise her. Similarly, while Joe, um, gets everybody working on finding Wishbone, uh, the ornery old botanist kind of warms to Wishbone. He takes him home, washes the mud off of him, feeds him. He doesn't know. He seems to be a good, well-behaved dog. He has no idea, and he wants to treat him well. And then he's going to go the next day try to find whoever Wishbone's owner is, assuming that there will be posters put up, which Joe and David and Sam put up posters, assuming that people will be calling. He's going to try to. He's not going to just keep him. He's going to try to find him, find his rightful home. But he mentions that his wife, who I guess died fairly recently, loved dogs, and so he treats Wishbone like his wife would, I guess, because toward the end he says, I helped Wishbone and Wishbone helped me. And at first I was like, how did Wishbone help him? And then I figured out, well, it's probably just opened up his heart and made him a little happier and more. When we first see him, he's putting a little flower into a little baggie, and he's saying something about how people are awful and muttering to himself. So naturally, it has a happy ending. He takes Wishbone out the next day, and Wishbone, being Wishbone, escapes from the guy's grip and gets stuck in the same hole and starts barking so that people will come and find him. And both Joe, who is scouring the forest looking for Wishbone, and Hubert come to the rescue. And that's when they meet, and ultimately, the next time Joe needs to go and be without Wishbone for a while, and he can't leave him at home, which he could, but he gives him, loans him, or leaves him with Hubert, and Hubert has some fun with Wishbone. And Joe he takes his bike into the woods to go looking for Wishbone, but very significantly lets the bike fall to the ground when he hears Wishbone barking and runs to find him. Silas Marner, won't go into too much detail about how it ends, but then I don't know, because the Wishbone adaptation is definitely not the whole thing, and there may be significant changes, but it's a good, solid ending. So yeah, Silas Marner. I really want to read Silas Marner now. I have The Mill on the Floss. I'll read that because I have it. I'm not going to go out and find new books anytime soon, but Silas Marner definitely on the list, whereas it wasn't before. I think, I don't know, there's some epic poem with Mariner in the title, has to do with an albatross. That's what I thought this Silas Marner was, and that's why I didn't remember it. Part of the reason I didn't remember it. But I really loved the episode, and it made me want to read the book, which is what Wishbone is for, and what those early episodes did with most of the books. The first time I saw them. The next one is A Tale of Two Cities, or A Tale, spelled T-A-I-L, of Two Sitters, referring to babysitters. I wasn't a fan of the book. I don't think I'm that into the French Revolution, which is what the book is about, but the Wishbone episode was good, and I understood it and followed it and enjoyed it a lot more. It was another one. I thought it was going to be kind of like Ivanhoe, where like the first 2 minutes seemed to be just exposition, and I realized, oh, that's just the first few hundred pages of the book, so they can get to the part that they are writing the parallel story for, and that everybody knows and wants to see. So that it was better than Ivanhoe, and it didn't have as much narration after that point. And the premise is that David, I don't know if I think he's acquired, and I think he may have had something to do with putting together this fancy new off-road remote control car, and he's supposed to meet up with Joe, and then they're going to play with the remote control car and have a lot of fun. I used to love doing that. But his parents, I guess, spring a babysitting gig on him. He's got to look after his little sister, Emily, who we remember from the first couple of episodes of Wishbone, very, very into Wishbone, and her friend, Tina. And so they the girls don't want to play with a remote control car because they'd rather do. They're much younger. They don't think it's cool. And Joe and David really do want to play with the remote control car, but they can't do it in Joe's house. So this all happens in Joe's house. But eventually, David just says to the girls, "Will you, stay put, stay in here while we go out and play with the car?" And they say, "Sure." And then they say they're going to dress up Wishbone and put ribbons and things on him, and he doesn't want that, so he goes out too and ends up chasing the car around. And while Wanda is having fun with it, and it runs into a tree. So then Wishbone is put back inside with the girls that want to dress him up. And they cause all sorts of other trouble in the house. They run around, little kids in a house alone. They do things with toilet paper that I don't know how they did them, because the toilet paper is hanging from the ceiling. They TP the inside of the house. And so anyway, the Tale of Two Cities portion is mostly the last bit about this Frenchman. I forget even though it was said over and over again in the thing. I forget his name. I'm not into this story, Tale of Two Cities. I'll give it another chance at a later time in life, but you can read my thoughts on it from my blog in the description below to get a sense of why I don't really follow it. The part essentially where this guy, he's part of an aristocratic French family who made a lot of people miserable. He left France because he didn't want to have anything to do with it, with the way that his family was. He made a life in London, and he went back. I forget exactly why. I think it was to help certain other people. He got caught, and then a very selfish guy who, quote unquote ish, paraphrasing quote, never did anything for anybody in his life, switches places with him in prison so that he doesn't die and can go back to his beloved and have a life, because he did go back to France when it was dangerous for him to do so, and so he deserves to live. This is it was a far, far better thing I do today than I've ever done before. This is also the book that it ends with that line. It starts with, or ends-ish. I don't know exactly where that line is at the end, but I think it's at the very end. And then at the very beginning, it's it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This is that book. Let's see. Oh, I wrote down. There's a lot on bikes in these Wishbones. I rarely see helmets. They were wearing helmets when they roller skated and rollerbladed, but I rarely see them wearing helmets on bikes. In this case, it was Sam who wasn't wearing a helmet, but I think Joe wasn't wearing a helmet with his bike in the previous episode either. Weird for a kids show on PBS. But I suppose if you're encouraging people to read, to stay inside and read with your show, then making things look more dangerous might be the way to go. Wishbone is initially blamed for the chaos in Ellen's house. The girls, though, they do take responsibility, but since they are not supposed to be the responsible ones of the kids in this episode, Joe and David are responsible for cleaning up the mess that the little girls made. So that's these two Wishbone episodes. The next two are Frankenstein, which I have read, and Journey to the Center of the Earth, which I might have read. I don't know how. I'll have to look that up. This is why I keep a blog of books that I've read, so that I can look up if I've read certain books. Frankenstein I've read twice on my own, and my dad read it to me. Approximately 10 years apart each time, kind of. But that's that for these. I can't wait to read Silas Marner. I can't wait to see those other episodes. That's all for now, but let's wag another tail.